What do you think is critical for people to be thinking about in terms of making advertising relevant? Because obviously that's what so many of us are here to talk about.
Well, look, I think first and foremost, you need to think from the consumer side first and not think about it from, is the advertising for my brand right? Or it's all part of it, but first is how is that message, how is that creative going to be consumed? How is that person on the other side going to dive into it? So we look at it a couple ways. One, there has to be an understanding of what the transaction is in the ad world, and I think where the industry lost its way to some degree was we overloaded the formats, we overloaded the amount of commercial messages going to consumers. So they started to say, this is too much, 18 minutes out of an hour of commercials. My time is more valuable than that. And I think as an industry, we didn't value, and I'm not sure we still do, value people's time in a way that allowed them to say, I get this, there's a transaction. I'm not paying as much as I could be paying because my entertainment experience is being supported by advertising. I think we have to get back to really locking in on what that right transaction is and how we make that a value proposition and how we don't just move the commercial format to a digital world. And we're thinking about from an experience, how do you create an ad experience that is focused on the customer experience? We have still the majority, a fairly strong majority of our consumers still come in and choose the ad-supported platform versus the no ad, and right now there's about a $4 difference in price. And I think it's getting back to quality, premium environment, lower ad load, more relevance to those ads. I think that creating creative technology that allows you to not only create relevance based on data targeting, but create relevance based on what ad I'm serving to someone is really important going forward.
DTC is a different muscle group for most companies. What does it take to be a successful direct-to-consumer brand from a marketing perspective?
It really does. It really does take a cultural shift inside the company. It's easy to say, and I think every company out there will say, it's easy to say, well, we're going to be a direct-to-consumer company. Sure. And whether you're P&G and think about Gillette or every other company out there that have legacy distribution models, it's not quite as easy once you get into it and say, what does that mean? First and foremost, how do I start thinking about design? How do I start thinking about relationships? How do I start thinking about trust to the consumer? And the advertising business is an interesting model. We always thought about, and I think this room still thinks about, impressions and rating points and DAR and TAR and every bit of various jargon around how we measure who or may watch, instead of thinking about it from the standpoint of what is the customer seeing, what is the subscriber seeing, how am I impacting, how am I reaching that particular person at a particular point in time. And that, we can call it a supply chain, we can call it whatever we want. From that moment in time where you say, I'm going to be a direct-to-consumer, there's an entire cultural shift of not what the company does, but how the company thinks. And you go from, it becomes a much more external experience, thinking about what's the viewer do? How do they come in? How quickly do they get from I just opened the app to something I want to watch? How long do they stay? How do we feed them? How do we move them from place to place to place? It's an incredibly complex and complicated product to deliver, right? Much less a cultural shift throughout companies all over the place that haven't grown up in this environment where they've been wholesale or they've thought about the feedback you used to get, I got a ratings or I got an impression or I got this. You never thought about who it was that was actually watching.